Okay, so you have your papers with you. Just for those who are going to be watching this over the internet, it's the paper is just simply a guide of what we're going to discuss. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about defining terms. We should understand what certain terms are that you're going to hear, you might know, you might have come across, and you may already know what they are, but let's just go through it. So term number one is shmura. You hear this word a lot for Pesach. You have what's called shmura matzah. Shmura matzah means that the matzah that you have has been watched from the time the wheat was cut, right, cut from the field, until the matzah is made. That's different than matzah that's not shmura matzah, what we call regular matzah. That matzah, from the time the flour is made until the matzah is made, that's watched. Now we want to make sure that the flour or anything that goes into the matzah doesn't become chametz, and it would become chametz by becoming damp, becoming wet. So therefore, shmura matzah is guarded matzah. Shmur, to shomer, is to guard. It's a guarded matzah, and what happens is if you choose to say that I'm only going to eat shmura matzah on Passover, so that means it's not that difficult when it comes to eating the matzah, because you can get shmura matzah made by hand. That's the big round ones. You can get shmura matzah made by machine. There's different kinds. But what it does mean is that if you use any type of mix or products, you can't use any of them, because there's a very few, if any, that are made with shmura matzah. So if you want to make a cake and you buy a manischewitz or another kosher Passover cake mix, none of those have shmura matzah. They all have regular matzah. So if a person would choose to say, I'm going to only eat shmura matzah, and there are some people who do, so that you have to take that into account. Now, it's not necessary to say that. It's praiseworthy if you'd like to, but it's not necessary. Where it really is necessary is to have shmura matzah at the Seder. That would be preferred to have the actual handmade matzah, which is similar to the matzah they had coming out of Egypt. And that shmura matzah, which you can get in a number of places, really for the mitzvahs of the Seder, it's appropriate to have. For other times, it's a good thing to do. It's not necessary. It has a lot of expense. It takes away a lot of options and opportunities you have to do things. So certainly, though, I would strongly encourage that you get that matzah for the Seder. Yes.
One question. My son last year made us buy 3 boxes of it at $20 a box or whatever.
Okay.
And we only used most of one.
Was he with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was probably underestimated, or he wanted to eat it otherwise. Because basically, you need matzah a number of times during the Seder.
Right.
Right. So the average person needs about 2.5 to 3 pieces of matzah. Right, that's about how much you need. You don't necessarily have to eat all that, but if you use a rule of thumb of 2 pieces of matzah each Seder per person, so then his idea wasn't that far off.
Okay.
For whatever reason, maybe less people came, or people didn't eat the full amount.
Or you overestimated.
Right. Okay. So that's shmura. Now you're going to hear that word a lot, and now we understand it. The next one is gebruchs. Gebruchs is actually a Yiddish word, and the idea behind it is to dunk, or to take matzah and to put it in liquid. There are some people who have a custom that they will not allow their matzah or any matzah-like food to come to any liquid, to touch a liquid, because it could be that there's some unbaked flour on the matzah, and you put it in a liquid, it'll become chametz. If you don't have this custom, right, I would tell you, do not take this custom. Don't do it. It makes it very, very difficult. Again, you won't be able to use any of the products that you can purchase. You'll boil down to having meat, maybe 1 or 2 brands of gefilte fish, and matzah, and potatoes. That's basically all you'll be able to have. Now, for those people who have a custom to follow it, they can be blessed and let them follow it. But I can tell you that all of my teachers, all of the rabbis that I studied under, have all said repeatedly, if you do not have the custom of following this law to not dunk matzah into liquid of any sort, don't do it. Just, you can't have matzah balls. You can't have any of the things. They take out matzah in soup. People who follow this strictly will keep matzah inside of a bag, and they won't allow it to get onto the table because it'll get wet. So don't do it if it's not a custom that you already have. The next word here is kitnius, which is a word you're going to hear very often. Kitnius means basically legumes. And this is a type of food which the Ashkenazic community, through the Ashkenazic rabbis, a number of centuries ago, have said that Ashkenazi Jews should not eat on Passover. This would include rice. This would include beans. And these types of things were forbidden by the Ashkenazic rabbis that we shouldn't eat. It's not forbidden by the Torah. So you'll see in our discussion that there are certain times when they are permitted. But in general, the rabbis have forbidden it. And that's why you'll notice that there are certain foods that Sephardic people, that Sephardim, will use, which we won't use, because they don't have this rule. It's a rabbinic law made by the Ashkenazic rabbis, and it's a custom that we should keep as Ashkenazim. It's a rule for us. However, it's not as severe as a Torah rule. So, for instance, as I was just asked, let's say a Sephardic person invites you to their home for Passover, and they eat rice, or they eat peas, or they eat the other types of things that we won't eat, you're allowed to eat at their table, you're allowed to eat their food, but you're not allowed to eat those things. So, therefore, if they have a pot, and in that pot they cooked rice a day before, you're allowed to eat food made in that pot, as long as there's no rice in the food. Right? You're not supposed to eat that food, but it's only rabbinically forbidden, so we're not so strict to say that you can't eat with them. So you're certainly allowed to. But it's a rule. It's not a custom. It's a rule for Ashkenazim that we have to follow this. And it carries over not just into the actual food. Now it's been understood that it's also, in many cases, it applies to derivatives of it, like oil. There are certain types of oil that we don't eat today because it's similar. It comes from something that was kitnius. While originally they may have done it, we don't know for sure if the rabbis actually forbade just the object or even the derivatives of the object, but we become strict on it and we don't even use the derivatives. So those three words are three words that you're going to hear in the religious community. And again, shmura matzah, you don't have to do all the time. It's a nice thing to do. If you do it, you should be blessed. But you should do it at the Seder. Gebrachs, the idea of not getting your moisture onto your matzah, it's a legitimate custom for those people who have it in their family. If they want to do it, that's their, they have the prerogative to do so. It's not my place to tell them not to, but I will tell you under no circumstances should you accept this custom. It's unnecessary for us to do so. And kitnius became a law based on a custom for Ashkenazim, which we follow. Okay, so those words we're going to be using throughout our discussion. Those are important words to keep in mind. The next thing is, what needs to be certified kosher for Passover? So we're going to refer to something needing to be having a hechsher, which means it's certified as kosher, or to be certified. We can understand that it certainly has to be kosher, right? Mm-hmm. Rule 1 is it has to be kosher. Now, does something always have to be certified kosher for Passover? So I go through basically three types of items here: food, toiletries, and medication. There's other things, and we'll get into them. Food, in general, has to be certified kosher for Passover, especially today, because today many food preparation companies are parts of conglomerates, very large companies that might have been a smaller company at one time, but got bought out, and that got bought out, and that got bought out. Now there's this enormous company that owns 100 different companies, and therefore when you go and say, well, what could be in asparagus that's not kosher for Passover? Well, nothing could be in asparagus that's not kosher for Passover, but in the preparation of that asparagus, to put it into a can, the same company might make noodles. The same company might make many other things. So therefore, you need to certify food to be kosher for Passover. Now, there are some foods, which we'll get into, where you don't, but in general, you need to. We'll go back to it. Toiletries. What about perfume, aftershaves, deodorants, and all these types of things? The problem that arises with these is almost entirely because they're alcohol-based. Many of these things have alcohol in them. And sometimes that alcohol is grain alcohol, which is the same as whiskey, liquor. And the grain alcohol is chametz, literally. So therefore, many people are strict not to use any toiletries that have any type of grain alcohol in it. Now, some toiletries have wood alcohol. They don't have grain alcohol. There's a list here. I was looking at both the core book and a list I put together myself that I have here that gives you an idea of different toiletries that just simply are fine, that they don't need any type of certification. They've got foot powders, glues, hydrogen peroxides, ink, laundry detergents, all these types of things, and there's more and more of it that certainly don't need it. When it comes to something like antiperspirant or deodorant, there are many brands that we know for sure that don't need to be certified, especially because there is nothing in it. And then there's another point to keep in mind, is that one of the rules of something having to be certified kosher for Passover is that it's food. That it's something that you might not eat it, but if you would leave it out and you had a dog, the dog might eat it. Now, I don't believe a dog would eat perfume. If you've ever tasted it, it tastes terrible. And therefore, in many of these toiletries, even if it might have something in it, we're often lenient with it and say that you can use it anyways because it's not edible. It's not food. Like shoe polish, very well could have alcohol in it made from grain, but no one's going to eat it. It's not food, and therefore you can use it without worry. You can, and it's many other things are similar. There's no question you can get kosher for Passover brands of deodorant. Like I see in here, there's some examples of of various deodorants, disposables, detergents the COR has, and in my list that I put together, I also have like hair gels, and all hair gels are fine. I looked up isopropyl alcohol is fine. Nail polish remover, they're all fine. All types of ointments are fine. Oven cleaner, paint, polish, shoe polish, furniture polish, silver polish, they're all fine. Powdered dish detergent, that's also fine. Even liquid dish detergent is fine. Sanitizer, scouring pads, all shampoo. Unless the shampoo says it has oats or oatmeal in it, which they sometimes put in, or beer even, for curls, then you don't have to worry about them being kosher for Passover. They all are. Stick deodorants, all of them are kosher for Passover. All stick deodorants, they're no problem at all. All tissues are fine. Let's see, water. Right? You buy bottled water. Bottled water does not have to be kosher for Passover. Wax paper doesn't have to be kosher for Passover. Plastic wrap doesn't have the certification. All of these types of things, petroleum jelly, they don't need it because they're not edible. And even if some of them might have something in it, you don't eat it. Nobody eats it. And Passover, it's forbidden. While it's forbidden to get any type of use for chametz, it has to be used in the way that it's made, and you're not getting any type of oral pleasure at all out of some of these items. So those are all fine. They're not a problem. Medication now presents a bit of a different problem. Medication that's prescribed by a doctor. Your doctor says somebody has high blood pressure, heart problems, high cholesterol. The doctor prescribes medicine. This is a serious thing. Now, certainly you can go to the pharmacist and you can ask the pharmacist if this drug is available in something that has no kitnius, like cornstarch, or no chametz. And if it's available without it, it's preferable. But if it's not available without it, then it's very important that you realize that you have to take your medicine. So even if that medicine, the doctor says you need to take it, and you can't skip a day or you can't skip a week, then regardless of what it is, if you can't get it kosher Passover, you have to take the medicine. And why you have to do it is not just because it's good for you, is because it's not food. Medicine that's prescribed by a doctor is not food. Now, where it becomes an issue is with over-the-counter medication and homeopathic medication, because in these cases, doctors aren't, in most cases, prescribing them. You're taking a cold pill, you're taking an aspirin, you're taking a cough drop, right? These types of things, they have a whole different story. They would need to be kosher for Passover. Many of them are. Aspirin is kosher for Passover, period, right? Where you have a problem is with flavored things, cough drops, cough syrups, any type of over-the-counter drug, even vitamins that have a coating on them. All of these are real issues because the doctor does not tell you you have to take it. You take a multivitamin because you want to. It's helpful for you. You might believe it's helpful for you. It might really be helpful for you. But unless the doctor tells you you have to take iron, or you have to take this, or you have to take that, then you're taking it at your own desire. And there it becomes questionably it might be considered food. It's a food additive, but it might be considered food, and therefore one would need that all of the over-the-counter things should be kosher for Passover, or don't use it for a week. If you're not being prescribed it, so the world won't fall apart if you don't use it for a week. All right, so it's important to understand that when it comes to medication, if it's prescribed, you should try to get it. That the pharmacist, they have books, they can tell you what's in there. See, the problem with prescribed medicine, with pharmaceuticals, is that the drug itself is fine. There's no problem with the drug. It's what is the drug in. Like when you take a pill, the pill is 90% filler and 10 or less percent medication. But they use but if you would take a pill that was just medication, it was so small, you wouldn't be able to take it. Or you'd need some way of it transporting to get absorbed into your body. So they put cornstarch, for instance, into capsules or into pills, and they put the medication in the cornstarch, and then they make the pill. So you're swallowing it, the cornstarch digests in your body, and the medication goes into your body. Right? So that's where the issues come up. So again, if the doctor prescribes it and the pharmacist says it's not available to you, then you must take it. You do not take a chance on your health because of that. Right? If it's prescribed. When it's not prescribed, then it's a different story. Okay? Now let's begin talking about some cleaning. Okay? If you have any questions, by the way, of any particulars, before I get to the end where we talk questions, but just feel free to ask. Cleaning for Passover. We'll start with the kitchen. Starting with the kitchen, let's start with the appliances. Okay, let's start with the easiest to the more difficult. Probably the easiest is your refrigerator. Remember, rule number 1, nobody cooks in a refrigerator. Okay, there's never heat in the refrigerator. So therefore, you have to clean your refrigerator for Passover, because there could be actual food that is chametz in your refrigerator. So you clean out everything that's not chametz, and then you clean your refrigerator. Then you wipe it out. You take a cleanser, a soap, and you clean your refrigerator. By doing so, the soap will spoil whatever food crumbs might be in there that you couldn't get at.
Vinegar?
Yeah, vinegar could do the same idea. But something that spoils food. Soap spoils food, right, by definition. So when you use anything, some type of cleanser in your refrigerator, so if it's clean and you don't see, there's no crumbs, nothing in there, your refrigerator is kosher. One thing you should not do is line your racks with aluminum foil. And people do this. And the reason you shouldn't do it is it will break your refrigerator. Because refrigerators are created that they have a certain airflow. The air flows throughout the inside of the refrigerator. If you put aluminum foil throughout your racks and you cover up the passageways that it uses, your refrigerator will work to an extent that you could cause it to break. So you should not do that. That doesn't mean you can't put aluminum foil in the drawers if you want to, if you have a question. But the reality is you don't cook in the refrigerator. And therefore, as long as you've cleaned it, your refrigerator is fine. You don't have to go crazy with it, because you're not using heat in your refrigerator. There's no transference unless you actually have a piece of chametz in there. So if you cleaned it and taken everything that's chametz out, and then you clean it with soap, there's nothing in there anymore. So you're fine. Right? That's why it's the easiest. The next thing that's actually relatively easy is your oven. An oven, basically, the law is, when it comes to anything with kosher, that it's just like biology. In kosher, by using heat causes something to expand. When it expands, something goes inside of it. Like let's say you're cooking meat, and the meat splatters, and it's hot in the oven. So the metal of your oven will expand to a certain extent. The meat will hit it. When your oven contracts, when it gets cold, the tiny little particles of meat are entered into the metal. Right? So therefore, what you do in order to make it kosher Passover or kosher, is you have to get that metal to expand again, a little bit more than it did before, and then you clean it. Then when it cools off, there's nothing in it. It's kosher. It's become kosher. That's what we're doing. So if you have a self-cleaning oven, then you simply put it on self-cleaning mode, and it goes to the point where it's hot enough that anything will expand, and any food that's in there will be gone. Then you just wipe it down, and it's fine. It's kosher for Passover. A good thing to do is to take the racks that are in there and leave them in there at this time when you kosher it, because then you've koshered the racks. And now, if you have a stove, not a flat top, but a stove that has actual spots, right? Let's say gas or electric. If you take the metal racks, like they're iron racks on a gas stove, and you put that in the oven also, they'll become kosher. Right? But you have to be careful that you're not putting a thin, soft metal in your oven, because it'll melt. Yeah, but iron, which is what most of these grates are on your stove, won't. Now, more and more today, people are using flat top stoves, and they're made with all types of glass-like material. So keep in mind that you can kosher these, but it's a totally different way. And basically what one does is you don't use it for chametz for 24 hours, for a full day. Then you heat it up, and you wipe it down. And then you take some hot water, like from a tea kettle, and you lightly pour it on the stove. And that's what it does, is it heats it up, and you dry it, and then you dry it off, and you've koshered it.
So could you put the hot water in the center, or can you just turn the burners on really high?
Well, you can do both. First, you can turn the burners on. Right after you've heated it up, you can turn the burners off, and then you can put these on. Now, the reason is that one of the reasons you heat it up the stovetops, when you put the hot water on, if you don't heat up the stovetop, you can crack it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why you want to make sure that the stovetop is already hot when you put on hot water, and you don't have to drown it.
Right.
You just have to put a bit on there, enough on there so that it covers the spots, and then you can wipe it off. The idea being is that you're heating it up hotter than it usually is, and anything that was in it has already been, because it's been 24 hours, it's already spoiled. Now you're just getting rid of the spoiled stuff and cleaning it. Do not, under any circumstances, put aluminum foil on that and try to cook. You will break it.
But I put a blech on top of it last year. That's fine, right?
Did it work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't have to worry about it. I didn't think about it.
I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I can't tell you on every occasion.
My son's an engineer, and he poured boiling water on all of it last year.
Okay, but I'm not sure if that would work or not. I know it won't convey heat very well, right, on a blech.
It kept my food. I kept it on low.
But, because it doesn't heat in the same way that a regular stove does, right? So, but that's an example. Okay, so your stove and your oven is easier than your stove, because the oven be self-cleaned. If you don't have a self-clean, so then the way you kosher an oven is by cleaning it. You take it, take whatever food is in there out to make sure that it's basically been rid of food. You put in the stuff that you use to clean it, oven cleaner. You turn it on high and broil, right? And you go through the process that it tells you on the can. After that's done, when it cools off, you wipe it out, and it's now kosher for Passover. It's the same thing as doing self-clean. You're just cleaning it.
What about the coils at the top of the stove?
The coils are all fine because you're heating them up to such an extent.
And how long do you have to heat them for?
Just whatever it tells you to clean it. It'll tell you on the can, 45 minutes, 40 minutes. You don't have to do it for a long period of time.
No, I don't mean in the oven, I mean the stove, the top.
The cooktop.
Okay, so the stove top there, you have to heat it up until it's gone red, and then the red stops. Like it's hit the hottest it's going to go, and that's it. But you also have to do that after waiting 24 hours. The 24 hours is important because Jewish law says that in 24 hours food spoils. So anything that is absorbed into those burners is considered spoiled food, and spoiled food is not food according to Jewish law. Right. Therefore, you've already done a rule. You've taken opinion one, it's kosher. Now, opinion two is you heat it up. Now you've fulfilled koshering your stove in two different ways. Right? So that's how you do that. Now a toaster oven, a little one, extremely difficult to clean for Passover. I would recommend you don't try. It's virtually impossible to clean a toaster. I don't know what you would do with it anyways. Don't try. I would suggest you don't try. Clean it out because you don't want to have the comments around, but put it away.
I did, and I can't find it still.
What?
I put it away last year, and I still haven't found it.
All right. So you'll find it this year. So now people always ask about hot water urns. Like, you have a coffee urn that you keep hot water in. So a hot water urn is not an issue. You put water in it. So the only area that could be a problem is the spigot because it's made out of plastic. And you could theoretically make hot chocolate and stick it there and the foam goes all over it, and you've now made that a problem. So the two ways that people will use it, if that might have happened, is you can put aluminum foil over the spigot, right, so that your food doesn't come into contact with the actual plastic, or you pour boiling water over the spigot, right, just as a way of doing it, and you of course don't use it for 24 hours. So either way is acceptable. Just on that question, just so you know, tea, there are some teas, I know that they give you some here. that regular pure black, green, or white leaves or bags are fine. In other words, if you get just pure tea, it's fine. Lipton decaf is fine. Nestea unflavored is fine. Herbal teas all need special certification, because herbal teas, I used to do a kosher certification for herbal essence in Colorado years ago. Not only did they have things that were chametz, they had things that were unkosher. They had actually unkosher things in the tea. You would find it hard to imagine, but it's true. They had gelatin in some of the teas, which was not kosher. They called it natural flavorings.
So if you use Warshawski, whatever that brand is,
What's it?
the Warshawski tea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so the reason you buy that is because they're certified kosher.
Right.
But you really don't have to. Like I said, Lipton is kosher. Anyways, regular tea, just black tea, those types of things are all kosher. As for coffee, it tells us a few that here, if you want to get, I strongly suggest don't buy the kosher for Passover like brands, like the Jewish brand of coffee. It's usually terrible. And I like coffee. But here it says Taster's Choice Instant and Folgers Instant are all fine. Regular beans, whole or ground, do not need certification. Right? So, like for instance, I go to what's called a micro brewer, a micro roaster. It's a guy who roasts coffee. Right? Like when you go to Second Cup, somebody roasted their coffee. Right? So the guy I go to is a small place, and I can go and buy beans from him, and he can grind them, and I can use that on Passover without a question. They're regular. There's no flavorings. Right? You can't. Any flavored coffee needs to have certification. You probably will never find it. But if you want regular coffee, you can get regular beans and do it. I do know that Starbucks every year creates a line right before Pesach. It's probably already out, because when you buy Starbucks coffee in general, it's about 2 months old. So right now they probably already have out packages of coffee that is certified kosher. But really, when it comes down to it, you don't really need to have a special certification on regular ground or whole bean coffee. It just needs to be that, regular or ground, right? And that's all. But how about your coffee maker? Okay. First thing, coffee filters. They don't have to have any certification. They're fine. Your coffee maker. If you're careful with your coffee maker, you don't put other things in it. You don't put any other types of odd coffees, flavored coffees, things that might make it chametz or unkosher, then you have no problem. If you did, or you don't know, for $20 you can buy Mr. Coffee. You're only going to use it for a week, right? So you buy the cheap one, and it doesn't have to have a timer, it doesn't have to have a clock. You just buy one, and they're so cheap it's worthwhile just to do it rather than to play around with it. So I have we have a Passover kitchen in my house. In my Passover kitchen, among the items we have is a coffee maker. And it's a cheap one. I've been using it for 5 years. Also, another way of doing it is a French press, or a bodum, they call it, right? The thing you put the coffee in, put the water in, and you push it down, right? You can use that. You can't do it on Shabbos, but you can use it on Yom Tov, and you can use it on a weekday. So that's another one. You can buy one for Passover. They're $20, and you can have that. Okay. So other appliances, a dishwasher. It's possible to kosher a dishwasher. It's not reasonable though. It's like a dishwasher. Koshering a dishwasher is like koshering a toaster. Is like koshering a barbecue grill. All three are possible, but then the amount of time and effort you have to put into it is not worth it. Certainly, a barbecue grill is ridiculously difficult. Forget it. Don't even think about it. If you want to have a barbecue on Passover, buy a new one. You can say every time you want to do it, buy a new one every Passover and use it, but don't try to kosher it, right? And the same applies for your dishwasher. A dishwasher, the biggest problems that people have with dishwashers is that things get stuck, food gets stuck in the bottom of the dishwasher in general. That causes it to back up. That's the most common problem that anybody ever has with a dishwasher. And that, by definition, is going to tell you have a problem with Passover, because when you clean your dishes in there, no matter how many times you run that dishwasher afterwards, there's food in the dishwasher. It's in the traps. It's in the different places, and it's going to come out. And it's going to make everything in there chametz. So it's not worth even trying. If you really want to have a dishwasher, they're about $150. You can buy one, a portable dishwasher that you keep in the closet and you take it out and use it. Otherwise, use paper plates and buy or hand wash. It's a week. It's only a week.
A hand wash.
Okay. So those, but the main appliances. Now let's talk about the microwave. The microwave, there are different opinions on. My Rabbanim taught us that with a microwave, you firstly don't use it for 24 hours. Then secondly is if you have a glass turntable in it, you need to wrap that glass turntable in saran wrap, totally, right, and it won't make a problem in the microwave. And then you take a glass of water, and you put it in the microwave, and you run the microwave until the water is boiled to the point that it's steamed up the inside of the microwave. After you've waited 24 hours, you've covered the glass, and you've done this, right? Now all you have to do is wait for it to cool and wipe it down, and it's now kosher for Passover.
So you take off the saran wrap?
No, you leave the saran wrap on
for the
over
7
Passover
days.
because the glass, right, could have things.
Okay, so you wrap it in saran wrap, and then you put a cup of water in there?
Right, a cup of water will kosher the inside of the microwave because it steams it up. It heats it the same way it heats anything else. Then when you wipe the water out, you've now made it kosher.
So now that saran wrap...
But you have to wait the 24 hours.
Right, but that saran wrap can stay the same saran wrap for the whole time?
Yeah, you can change it if you want,
Okay.
but it can. Right, the only problem you're going to have is if you spill on it. If you spill on it, then you have to be careful. Okay? Now, other areas. Another thing is the sink. Right? So if you have a white sink, that means a porcelain sink, they really can't be kosher. And you'd have to buy a Tupperware. What people buy is a Tupperware tub that you can use to put your dishes in there and wash it in the tub. And you have one for milk, take it out, you have a different one for meat, you have different racks to put your stuff in, and you're all set. If you have a stainless steel sink, which is very common today, you can kosher it. And you kosher it by not using it again for 24 hours and then taking boiling water from a teapot. Right? That's very, very hot water. And you pour it over the sink, going over the entire area of the sink. And you make sure that the drain pot on the bottom is totally clean. There's no food in there. Right? And you should run like the disposable for that, the carburetor, and you should run hot water through it to make sure that anything that's in there is gone. Because one of the biggest problems with a sink, other than the sink itself could be chametz, is that if it overflows and things come back up through the pipes, if you haven't spoiled that food that's in the pipes, then you're making everything chametz again. So you have to make sure that everything's been flushed through before Passover begins. So, and then you can use your sink without anything in it. It's just 100% fine. And as far as the soaps that you use, so as I said earlier, you don't have to be concerned about any soap that you use for washing dishes. There are some people who will, you'll have kosher soaps, you'll have kosher for Passover soaps, fine, and if you want to buy them, that's fine. Yeah, there are many of the brands that are regular brands that you buy during the year will be marked as kosher for Passover, and it won't cost you any more. You want to use it, that's fine. But by definition, according to Jewish law, soap spoils food, and therefore you don't need it to be kosher. It's by definition, it doesn't have to be. So I learned from my Rabbanim that it's not necessary that you have any soap that's certified, so you don't. Now, other areas that one should seriously consider cleaning are their clothing, toys, furniture, and the one important one everyone forgets is the vacuum bags. If you have a full house vacuum built into your house. So let's go in order. Clothing. Clothing is a common place that people keep things. If you have children in the house, forget it. Everything has chametz, right? You got to take out all of you wash the carpets. You got to take out the pillows. You got to you got to go through all of your furniture. If you don't, and you're reasonably careful throughout the year with what you do, you don't eat everywhere and so forth. So then you have to do more of a cursory check in these areas. You should look around to see what there is. But things like toys, if you have little children, you have to wash down the toys because kids have chametz all over them. They're walking chametz. And you have to clean them. Your clothing, you have to check the pockets to see that you don't have crumbs in them. It's not uncommon. Right? And if you get something back from the dry cleaner, you don't have to worry about it. If you take something out of the wash, you don't have to worry about it. But if you have a suit, you have an outfit you're going to wear on Pesach that you wore before, and you didn't do that, you should check it. Right? There's such a kind of the furniture, as I said, the vacuum bags, right? Be it in a whole house vacuum or a regular vacuum, you have to change it for Passover because what you're doing is vacuuming up chametz all year. You want to get rid of that, so you change them. Okay, so those are in general the ideas. Now, when it comes to cleaning your garage and cleaning your car, so if you don't have children, chances are your car is not filled with chametz, although most of us are not careful in our car. We'll have a cookie in our car, have a coffee, right? And that, we don't think twice about it and just brush it off the seat and it's all over. So we really should have our cars clean. You don't have to have it detailed. Lots of people do. You know, a lot of people will mix spring cleaning with Pesach cleaning. You do what you like. But you should vacuum out your car and clean it, because the chances are there will be hummus in it. Not because you'll eat it, but you don't want to have hummus. So you should do that much. But more than that, you know, to shine it, to wax it, so if you want to do it, that's fine. You go ahead, but you don't have to. Then there's also your garage. So your garage, basically, unless you store food there, then there's really, all you have to do is look through it and see. Because most people keep in the garage are things that are not foods. They're going to be oils. They're going to be, you know, let's say, you know, windshield wiper fluids. Things that are not issues when it comes to Pesach, so they're fine. Where an issue comes up, very commonly, is pets. Pets, first thing, have the same rule as children when it comes to making a mess. So if you have pets, and you've got to really look around. But the real problem with pets is the pet food. What do you feed a pet? Because the law of Passover is not only that you can't eat the food, you're not allowed to have a gain from chametz. You can't gain, come out, you can't, they say you can't have hana in Hebrew, which means pleasure. That is, you can't have some type of gain. If you feed your animal, your dog or your cat or your fish, chametz, you're gaining by it because your animal's eating it. So you don't have to get them something else. But you can't do that. So your animal cannot eat chametz for that week. So my brother's a veterinarian, and I asked him, what do you do? Like, how do you deal with it?
Curious.
Right? So he told me, first thing is, most people don't want to give table food to their dog. Right? If the dog's not old and the dog's not sick, nothing will happen if you give him table food for a week. He might smell. That's about it. But he says it won't make him sick. It won't hurt them. It's a week. That's all you're talking about. Be careful, but you give them. He said there is kosher for Passover foods. There are some of the most expensive foods that they have for dogs, dog foods that you could buy from veterinarians, are 100% meat with no filler. He says, you know, he said that his understanding is that they're all kosher for Passover. I can't say myself, but I can tell you that if you give them the food from your table for a week, the world won't fall apart. When it comes to birds, interesting enough, you know, the company that makes bird food, the famous one is Hart's Mountain. Hart's Mountain actually was originally owned by observant Jews, and there was never a problem with chametz because of the stuff that they put in it. Today we don't know anymore. They don't own it. So again, you have to be careful with animal food. Some people will send their animal to boarding, right, like they do when they go away. Other people will give them human food. But you really can't give them chametz, and most dog food is chametz. It's got, you know, some type of meal in it, right? So that you have to be careful with. So a teapot has the same rule as an urn, right? Which is you can use it, right? If without a problem, right? Especially an electric one, because you're not going to wash that in your dishwasher, where it can come into contact with chametz. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. So let's go through some of the ideas of different things that you won't expect. I wrote them down here. That could be an issue. One of them is balloons and rubber gloves. Are two examples of something that you have to be careful about, because balloons and rubber gloves will often have flour or cornstarch in them in order so that you can use them. Like if you have doctor's gloves, surgical gloves, the real thin ones, for any reason that you might use them, they usually have starch. Otherwise, you can't get your hand in it, right? And that becomes chametz. So it's a problem. Balloons almost always have some kind of a flour or starch in it, in order so that when you put your mouth on it and you blow, it opens. Otherwise, they'll stay together. It won't open so easily. And so that, even a whoopee cushion, if you want to make jokes, those are all issues on Pesach, because they all could have that. So, and you're not going to find ones that are certified kosher for Passover. So you just really have a problem with that. Candles are not an issue. You have no problem with any of them, as I said before. Aspartame is an important one. Aspartame is in diet soda. So aspartame is kitnius. which means that for Ashkenazim we can't use it. That's why when you go to Sobeys, you'll notice that the kosher for Passover Diet Coke in our area will have a different certification. It won't have a COR on it, because according to the COR, which is basically Ashkenaz, you can't use it. The Sephardim can, so there's a Sephardic certification on it.
So you can't have
Diet Coke from Ontario because it has aspartame. Now you will find imported in the kosher grocery stores Diet Coke products, Sprite, Coke, and so forth, which you can have, because they will change the aspartame to some other type of for the wheat, to some other type of non-sugar sweetener. Right. Okay. So you'll have to look. But the local ones, when you walk into Sobeys, you'll see the local ones will be $1.50, and the imported ones will be $2.50. Okay. But you can't buy the local ones if you're Ashkenaz. You have to buy those other ones. Seltzers are not a problem. It's only something with aspartame. Now, Coke itself, is much easier. Coke, the problem with that is that they use corn syrup. Corn syrup is a problem on Pesach for us. However, sugar is not. And Coke was originally made with sugar. It became less expensive to use Coke syrup, and they developed it into the formula. So on Passover, when you see kosher for Passover Coke, it will have sugar and not Coke syrup, and you'll notice the difference in the taste, but you can buy it. Right? Even the local ones, if it says kosher for Passover, you can buy it, but you will see there's a difference. It tastes different. If you have babies in the house and you want to give the baby formula, almost all formula is kitnios. And then it presents a problem. Now, here's an example where you're allowed to use kitnios, because an adult, you shouldn't use it. You're an adult, but a baby, right? The laws are a bit different, especially because they can't get anything else. That's all the baby can eat. Let's say the baby is not being nourished, so all the baby is eating is this formula. Maybe it's being nursed and having formula. Whatever the case is, it needs the formula. You don't play around with babies. You're allowed to use kitnios for a baby on Pesach. However, you should make sure that the stuff you use, the bottles, the brushes, are kept separate from your regular Passover food. But that's an example. Here, like the COR, similar to the list I made, they say that as long as it doesn't have chametz in it. So it says the examples they have are Enfamil, Enipro, Isomil, Kirkland Signature, Life Brand, Nestle's Good Start, Next Step, Parents' Choice, Similac. Those are basically the most popular ones, and they're all fine to use. Baby food does need a Passover certification because it's processed food. Right?
It does need.
What? It does need. Yeah. All right. Crock-pot liners is on here. I had that one too on my list. It doesn't need certification. And all coffee filters don't need certification. Cleansers and polishes, as I said before, all cleansers and polishes do not need certification.
So I can use my crock pot if I put the
liner in? No. You have to have a kosher for Passover crock pot.
Oh.
Right? But if you have one and you want to put a liner in, people say maybe I can't use the liner. The liner is fine. Right? The same thing with aluminum foil. You don't have to have Passover aluminum foil. It's fine. Right?
Can I just ask you something?
What?
What about like lipstick and things like that?
Like what?
Lipstick.
So lipstick, I'll tell you what they say here, but it'll be, and then I'll tell you how we discussed it before. They have it in a section in here, or maybe I have it in my list. 1 second. I made up my own list that I use. It is a little bit more bigger, larger. Let's see what he has. Because lipstick, of course, it goes right into your mouth. So it's a little bit, it could be a bit different. I'm just looking to see. Oh, here we go. Their lists. Chametz-free medications. They have a whole list here. Antacids you can use, painkillers you can use, sleep aids, allergy and cough medicines. Here we go. Eye cosmetics and lipstick. So they give you a list of about 20 different ones. A bunch of Estee Lauders, Max, CoverGirls, Clinique, are all ones that you can use. You can't use all of them because some of them do contain wheat products, actual wheat products. So with that, shampoos, they give you a list of them, but like I said, with a lot of these things, you don't even have to be concerned. Toothpaste is one that you do, because toothpaste goes in your mouth, right? So there's the more advanced and specialized toothpaste is, the more problems you'll have. So in general, and he says it here, and I have even a larger list. Aquafresh, they're all kosher. Colgate is all kosher except for the liquid one. Crest cavity protection, gel and paste is fine. Crest tartar protection is fine. Now on my list, I add a few others that I had checked on. I don't see it right now. But those are basically the plain ones, Gleam, Crest, Colgate, they're fine.
Sensodyne?
And then the ones I just mentioned. What?
Sensodyne on there?
I don't have Sensodyne, so I can't tell you for sure. Okay, mouthwashes. So you've got Crest Rinse, Crest Whitening, Oral-B, all of them, Scope, all of them, they're kosher. The problem with mouthwashes is they do have alcohol, and they will not have wood alcohol. They'll have grain alcohol, which is chametz. Wood alcohol, if you swallow it, it can make you blind or kill you. So they're not going to put that in these. These ones don't have alcohol. That's what's happened lately is that about 10 years ago there was a big issue that a lot of kids figured out that there was alcohol in mouthwash and they would drink it and get drunk. So they started making it without. Right? So, but if you look in the COR, you'll find a whole list of cosmetics, and if it's not enough, if you call me, I've got lots more that they don't have in here, just because over the years I've put together things and investigated some. They even have sun tanning products. It's interesting. Okay, so those are general ideas. Next, on Thursday, we're going to spend time, we're going to talk about koshering the objects, right? Pots, pans, china, glass, Teflon, Pyrex, frying pans. Right? We're going to go through all that on Thursday because there's quite a bit, and there are details where one differs from another that we have to keep in mind. And it's not simple. Today, it's more and more common that people aren't koshering any of their utensils and things. And when I was a kid, my mother used to kosher silverware and pots and pans and I don't know. My mother was a big cook and a baker, and she probably would make, without exaggeration, make 35 or 40 cakes right, over that 1 week. But today it's not done. You don't see it. And people aren't doing it like that, and they don't kosher all of these things. They basically buy them and keep them from year to year. So how many frying pans do you need, right, for 1 week? How many roasting pans do you need for 1 week? So yeah, you need stuff. You're making nice meals, and you're making a lot of nice meals, but you don't need all that many. So a lot of people don't kosher anything, and it's not the accepted opinion that you shouldn't kosher anything, but it's a reasonable opinion. That the less that you kosher things, then the less problem you have. You buy, every year, over 5 years, 1 year you buy plates, and 1 year you buy pans, and 1 year you buy silverware. By the end of 5 years, you'll have everything you need. You don't have to kosher.
Sure, everything I koshered last year and I put in the basement, that's fine.
Yeah, as long as it's been, kept away from stuff, you're fine. So that idea is always good. But for those who do want to kosher, we're going to talk about metal, china, plastic, glass, Teflon, and Pyrex next week, and then we'll go into some more of the specifics of koshering. But what I really wanted to cover mostly this week was to discuss the food stuff that you come across, right? Because most people are going to go shopping now, and they're not going to kosher their kitchens for another 10 days. But if you have a Passover kitchen, you might kosher it a little earlier. Like in our house, we have a Passover kitchen, but during the year we use the refrigerator and stuff, so we have to clean it. But in general, we certainly have till the end of the week for that. Are there any questions?
What about frozen food that we have now in the fridge? Not homemade, like say frozen raw salmon or meat or whatever it is. I don't know. What do you do with it?
Well, what you could do is, if you have more than one freezer, of course it's simple. Put it in one freezer and you sell the freezer. If you don't, you can put things like that in the freezer in its own racks, its own shelves, the bottom shelves, okay, because so nothing falls. and you cover it so that you're not staring at it when you open the freezer, and you sell those shelves. Right? We have downstairs now, you can pick it up, or you can go on our website, or I sent out an email today that has Sell My Chametz forms. All right? There's no cost involved. We say in it that we ask people to give a donation to help us support the poor. And all the money gets donated, goes to help people who don't have money for Pesach. But you don't have to do it. You can simply just give us the paper back, and nobody will think twice, and nobody expects a payment. It's just we ask. We don't ask to support the shul. We ask to support the people, and people, they need it. We can't. It's a sad day if we celebrate Passover, and there are people right among us who don't have the money to do so. But certainly you can take a form, and we'll discuss how the form works and what we do at the next class. But you can take them if you want downstairs. Right, any other questions for today?
Thank you very much.